Well, it is 1 o'clock and it's time for us to start the fourth webinar in our week of webinars this week. On Monday, we talked about CWAP 403 and had a first look at that. And today we're doing a first look at CWDP 303. And a little extra excitement, one of the authors on the CWDP study guide and one of the JTA participants volunteered to participate in the webinar today. So May is with us, Manon, Lessard, and she's going to be talking to us a little bit about what the JTA process was like and what it's like to live in the crazy world of trying to write a study guide. So I'll bring her in a little bit later on, and we'll get to meet her and hear from her again. First time we've heard from her on one of our webinars since January, so excited to have her back. We're going to go ahead and jump right in today to the content. So first of all, a reminder that Wi-Fi Trek is just around the corner. It's now less than 2 months away. So the pre-conference training starts on October the 14th, given that it's August the 16th. We've got less than 2 months and it's here. So it's coming up very, very quickly. And of course, at the pre-conference training, we'll have the CWAP 403 and the CWDP 303 classes running, as well as CWSP, CWNA, and CWS-CWT combo class. So all of that's going to be going on before the conference on the 14th, 15th, and 16th, and then the 17th through the 19th are the actual conference dates itself. So if you haven't registered yet, you can go to conferences.cwnp.com in order to learn more and get registered today. So make sure you check that out. All right, so our agenda today is pretty much the same as it was when we talked about CWAP. And that is that we're going to be looking at the new CWDP 403. The objectives are available. I'm sorry, it's CWDP 303. And I'm going to fix that live in my slide so you get the right information. So there we go. The objectives that we'll be looking at are available online at the CWNP.com website. So if you go to CWNP.com, go to certifications, CWDP, this PDF is available there, and we'll take a brief tour of it in a few moments. So we're going to talk about the development process, the job description, and that's when we'll get a chance to talk to Manon as well, or May as we all like to call her. We'll go over the objectives, starting with the knowledge domains and then looking at some of the topics covered. And I'll talk to you about timelines, which are going to be very similar to the CWAP 403 timelines that we talked about earlier in the week. So first of all, the development process. Just like CWDP, CWDP has gone through the same process and is in that product development stage, that fourth stage there. So the first thing was to select JTA subject matter experts, and they all got together in Las Vegas in March for 2.5 days to focus on CWDP for the job task analysis. And the point of a job task analysis is to say, what does a wireless design professional do? What is their job? They may have other things they do other than design, but when it comes to playing that role of a wireless designer, what do they do? So that is what the JTA is all about. Out of it come a job description, a long list of knowledge sets that they need to have, of capabilities they need to have, and tools that they need to understand. And from that, we then build the objectives. The objectives were developed and then sent out to the subject matter experts for feedback, and we went back and forth to develop the final objectives that are available now at cwnp.com. The next stage was product development, which began several months ago, and we're doing development of the exam as well as learning materials. So the exam is the same as it was before in that it's a 60-question exam that you'll have 90 minutes to take. And that 60-question exam is based on these objectives. So always know the objectives matter. The objectives are what drive the exam. Every item on the exam is derived from the objectives. So if you know those objectives and what they mean, what they stand for, and understand the knowledge that they expect of you, understand the skill sets they expect of you, you will be well prepared for the exam. We also, of course, have the learning materials, including the study guide, the course guide for live training classes, e-learning, and practice tests. All of those coming out throughout the month of September, so that those will be available to you. As you will see, the last phase is launch, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about timelines and when that's happening later on. So first of all, let's talk about what the subject matter experts that gathered for the JTA in Las Vegas came up with as a job description for a wireless design professional. They developed this Job description. The Certified Wireless Design Professional, or CWDP, has the knowledge and skill set required to manage the entire wireless LAN design lifecycle, defining, designing, deploying, and diagnosing. Tasks within these stages include gathering necessary information and requirements, creating a design, implementing the network, and validating and optimizing to ensure objectives are met. A CWDP can contribute to any stage of the life cycle and is able to take responsibility for any or all the stages within this process. This exact definition is in the objectives document, so you don't have to worry about trying to write it down real fast or something. When you download the CWDP-303 objectives from the CWMP.com website, you will be able to see this in there in the objectives document. But I want to draw attention to some things. Notice that for this level of exam, we call these professional level, right? CWAP, CWDP, and CWSP all end with that P, that word professional. And the level here is different than certainly CWS and CWT, as well as different than CWNA. You need to have the knowledge and skill set required. So you don't want to prepare for these exams with just head knowledge, just reading a book and that's all. I really encourage you to get real world experience. If you're unable to do a wireless design in the real world as part of your paid job, then understand and know that there are a lot of CWNEs out there that do a lot of wireless implementations, and they would be glad for you to shadow them on wireless projects in many cases. So get involved in the Twitter community and get connected with different CWNEs. And I think you'll find that they'll be very willing to help you out in almost every case. The CWNEs, by and large, are a group of people that are caring and friendly and willing to help. It is not some kind of a group like a set of professors or something that they're really not there for you along the journey. These people really do care. So take advantage of that community, get involved in it, and you could get some experience that way. The key is that the designer knows the entire wireless LAN design lifecycle, which starts with defining, getting those requirements, understanding business needs, technical constraints, these kinds of things, and then actually designing the wireless network, which does make up the largest bulk of the exam. If I remember right, it's 45%, but we'll see that momentarily. And then deploying and diagnosing. Now, deploying and diagnosing are smaller portions of the exam because they're not uniquely something a design professional does. That is, a CWNA may do the deployment of a network designed by a CWDP, and a CWNA or CWAP may do the diagnosing, but the CWDP needs to understand some of the common problems that happen at wireless implementation, and of course how to address those issues. Tasks within these stages include gathering the information and requirements, creating a design. That's going to be done usually with design software these days. So we have, just like the graphics design industry has software to design graphics, we have software to design wireless networks, and there are several vendors that provide those. Implementing the network, of course, this means that you as the design professional have either communicated effectively with the implementers or you're doing the implementation. And then validating and optimizing. The same thing there. The person doing the validation may not be the designer, but from the designer, they should have the metrics that they can look at to validate that the wireless LAN is meeting expectations. And then they may need some feedback from you, the design professional, to optimize and tweak things if they're not up to par. And the key then is that all of these stages, a CWDP can contribute to any and all of these, or even take full responsibility for any of these stages. So that's a summary of the job description of a CWDP. And what I'd like to do before I go on to look at the individual objectives is go ahead and bring in May at this point, so she can kind of give you some inside insights. She was there in Vegas with us. She was our note taker for most of the JTA for both CWAP and CWDP. And so not only did she give in the valuable information that she brought, but she also harvested all of the information from so many other people and was very helpful at keeping us all on focus and on target. And I certainly appreciated that very much. So May, if you're still here with us, just chime in and let us know a little bit about what your take was on the whole JTA process.
Well, it was a very interesting process because it brought together subject matter experts with different points of views. All CWDPs come with different backgrounds. Some people are working with large VARs. I work for a university. Some come from with a teaching background as instructors, as business owners as well. And that was the fun part of the exercise, was to bring together all those different angles into something that could really define the CWDP's job. Because to me, it might be something, but to Ryan, for example, Ryan Adzima was with us in Vegas. It was different because he used to work for a large VAR, and his take was more on, okay, we come in, we define, design, deploy, and maybe we'll be brought in to diagnose. But usually, sometimes, well, I hate to say this, but there's a lot of people that don't want to pay for validation. So, a VAR is going to be brought in. They're going to do a validation real quick if the client agrees to pay for it. But it unfortunately, it's not always in the culture, although the professional might know about it. So, and sometimes they're going to be brought in only to diagnose. So whereas my take is, I have to wrangle the politics to get my manager to find money so that I can define, design, deploy, and diagnose. And I spend a lot of time diagnosing because our life cycle is very long. We keep our infrastructure for a very long time. Whereas Ryan, for example, who is an amazing professional, will come in, define, design, deploy, or diagnose, and then move on to the other project. So, the take is a little different. So the exercise was very interesting.
Yeah, it was. And of course, it was a lot of fun too. We were in Vegas, so I believe you got to do some zip lining, right?
I did. That was fun. That was very high, very fast, and really fun. Yeah.
Cool. Now, the other thing going on with you right now, since we're talking about CWDP-303, is you are assisting as one of the authors developing the study guide. And you worked with us for the CWS and CWT study guides as the technical editor. And so you had the opportunity to kind of get that first experience working with us to develop those books, which we've gotten very positive feedback on those books. People are, particularly with certified wireless specialists, just in love with the book as beginners because they really feel that when they go through it, they're really grasping and understanding these concepts. And so I think we definitely hit the target with those. And now we're building CWDP, and this time you're an author writing 3 of the chapters in CWDP. So what's that experience been like so far for you?
Well, it's everything all at once. It's awesome to get the chance, the opportunity. And by the way, thank you for that, to you and Sean and all the CWNP team. But it's awesome, and it's scary, and we're trying to get the book out as soon as we can so that people will be able to go through with the new iteration of CWDP. And we're also trying to make this book a reference book. So it's been challenging and fun, and I'm trying to put myself back in the shoes of a CWDP candidate, and I'm trying to think of my coworkers who are not Wi-Fi specialists, and trying to take the angle. And I believe that my co-authors like you and Jason and Brett are trying to take the angle of, let me tell you how it's done. Here's how I would do it. Don't forget this and that, and this is why you do this as such. When I write, I feel like I'm explaining something to someone, and it makes it very interesting. And I hope that I'm not giving too many orders. I don't sound like I'm giving too many orders, but we have an awesome team around the book, and technical editors and editors and you as a reviewer. And I believe it's going to be an interesting book, a book that you want to keep on your bookshelf for beyond the CWDP exam.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's certainly our goal, and a lot more information than the previous book for sure. And so you mentioned the names, I'll mention them, and that is, of course, myself, you, Manon Lessard, Jason Hintersteiner, and Brett Hill are authoring on the CWDP book. And I didn't mention on Monday the authors for the CWAP book are myself, Brian Harkins, Raul Dionisio, and Landon Foster, all working on that book as well. So quite a few different authors working on the different materials. So I'm trying to do as little as I possibly can so that I can focus on managing the projects to get it all done. But we are all working together, and I think it's going to be some great stuff. So, well, May, thank you very much for getting on with us today. And anything else you'd like to say before I move on to talk about these objectives?
No, I mean, I could go on about how the GTA came from the intention. Well, actually, yeah. Let me give me 2 minutes if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Go ahead.
The GTA's exercise, I feel was a positive outcome from the willingness of CWNP to make the certifications relevant to real life experiences and what the professionals are really doing in the field. And that's important to notice because a while back, when Sean came on board with CWNP, there was a questioning, and there was um, uh, different points of views as to where the certifications should go. And I believe that Sean and you and the rest of the team at CWNP have listened to what the wireless LAN professionals were asking in making these certifications really real life experiences. You know, it's based on real life occupational aspects of the job. It's really hard for a professional, especially in wireless, since there are so many companies, so many manufacturers, to really get someone to have this understanding of the basics of RF and how to do things without having a taste of a vendor, or the point of view of a vendor. And that's what has made CWNP awesome, and this GTA exercise and the rewriting of the books and everything has made the certifications more relevant than ever, I think. So I do hope that people will appreciate the guides and appreciate the new objectives, and that they will address a lot of the preoccupations in the business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. And by the way, we mentioned the JTA for AP and DP back in March. We're going to be doing a JTA for CWSP in either probably early December or January. So who knows, May, I might be hitting you up again for that.
Whenever you need me, just call me.
Awesome. Thanks, May.
The number.
I appreciate you being on today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's talk about the different domains in the CWDP exam. Domain 1 is defined specifications for the wireless LAN. It does make up 25% of the exam. And as you can see here, there are 6 major objectives within that domain. We'll look at the actual objectives document and talk a little bit more about that momentarily. And then domain 2 is design the wireless LAN. And there are 3 major objectives here. Now, don't let that fool you, because these are 3 big major objectives, particularly the first 2. So just because there are only 3 listed as major objectives, we have sub and sub-sub objectives within this section. So definitely a lot of detail in there, and you'll see that in the objectives document. And then in domain 3, it's deploy the wireless LAN. We have 3 major objectives there. And domain 4, validate and optimize. And once again, we're back to 6 major objectives there. So let me just flip over and show you the objectives document again. So this is that document, and as I said, it starts out with basically an intro and then the job description we talked about. We do list the subject matter experts that were involved in the JTA. So for CWDP, it was Ryan Adzema, Robert Bartz. Myself, just as a guide, I did not really help create the output. I simply guided them along the process for the different processes to perform. Roel Dionisio, Don Douglas, Manon Lessard, Peter McKenzie, and George Stefanik. So those were for CWDP. I mentioned to you in the objectives for CWAP. The subject matter experts are listed there. And the ones who really just killed it and worked all week for us were Peter McKenzie, Manon Lessard, and Robert Barch. Those three were there all week long. So they were very willing to help us with both AP and DP, and we very much appreciate that, especially May, who was with us today, because she originally was only going to do one and someone had to cancel, and she just stepped up and said, hey, I'll do both of them for you. So it worked out really great. So here's that knowledge.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Tom.
go ahead.
It was just, I stayed on board just to read for Peter, you know.
Yeah, there you go. So the knowledge domains, I gave you the breakdown of those in the slides a moment ago, but it is also, of course, here in the document. And then you get into the actual objectives themselves. So here you can see a 1.0, and I said there are 6 major objectives, but as you can see, they have sub-objectives. So for example, we don't just say collect and use business requirements and leave it up to you to figure out what the details might be there, but we say it includes business use cases and justification, user requirements, regulatory compliance, and industry compliance. So you need to understand those different areas and how they impact the business requirements. And so notice it's collect and use. So it's not just about knowing which business requirements you need, it's understanding how those are actually used in the wireless design process. So for example, if a business use case is voice over IP or voice over wireless LAN, and that it's a multi-building campus, and they need to be able to use the voice over IP phones everywhere on campus, including in the buildings, between the buildings, in the parking lot, etc., then that information that you collected, that requirement of voice coverage everywhere, drives your design in a big way. So that's why it's collect and use and not just collect. Then it's collect, define, and use technical requirements. And here we're focusing on specific technical capabilities, but notice the addition of the word define, because sometimes the people you're meeting with in the business don't know what the technical requirements are. And so you may have to define them based on the business requirements, such as roaming for that voice over IP scenario we talked about. And I'm not going to read all of these, but I do want to just continue to point out to you some of the terminology that really highlights the focus of the exam items as you look at it. So for example, when we get to the design section, notice you define wireless LAN architectures and select the appropriate architecture for a design. So the point is, to be able to answer exam questions, you may need to select an appropriate architecture, right? Based on information that you get from the learning materials and your experience. And produce a design and communicate it. So that means, well, I've got to know how to use wireless LAN design software. Now, we're not going to teach a specific vendor's software as if you're in a class for one vendor, but we're going to teach you the things that are shared among them, the capabilities that they tend to offer as design tools, and make sure you understand how to use those things appropriately. Things like importing and calibrating floor plans, for example, spelled out right here in the objective. Setting the project parameters. What are the common things that you can set for a project within the design software, and so forth. Then you get into the tools for the design project, like site survey hardware, protective equipment, wireless analysis tools like spectrum and protocol analyzers, and so on. So again, I'm not going to read all of the objectives to you. I just wanted to give you a feel for the wording. And this is kind of a lesson on preparing for any certification. Pay attention to the wording, because if the exam items are written properly according to the objectives, they will test what those objectives say. And so if the objectives say use a tool, they're going to test your ability to use a tool. Not necessarily that you'll actually use the tool, but knowing what the option might be in a tool that allows you to get a job done. Because we are vendor neutral, we're not going to test a specific tool. Now, I do want to point out, as I did for CWAP as well, at the very end of the document, you've got your multi-page long list of acronyms. So all of these are acronyms common to the wireless LAN industry. And I think I noticed that someone even commented on the YouTube video of the previous webinar saying, hey, thanks for talking about the acronyms. And then there was a Twitter message about, well, it comes eventually. And I shared my method. So when I'm studying a new technology, or even if it's not in the IT space, something new that has a lot of acronyms, as I'm reading through the material, every time I encounter the acronym, I either in my head or out loud say it out loud, the meaning of that acronym. And by doing that, I find that one time through the material, I pretty well have all the acronyms down. So that's kind of what I do. But the reason I'm pointing this out is you may have an exam question that simply uses, for example, let's say NTP. And in the context of the question, while there might be many things NTP could stand for, in the context of the question, it'll be obvious that it's network time protocol. So the point is, if you had such a question, you need to know what that acronym means so you can answer it appropriately. I'm not telling you there's a question like that. I'm telling you that's an example of why you need to understand or know all of these acronyms. And yes, it still continues to go on and finally ends with WPA2. WPA3 didn't make it in to these objectives because it wasn't until June that WPA3 was finalized. So it'll be mentioned in the learning materials, but it will not be tested on this version of the exam in any extensive detail. Don't worry, CWSP is right around the corner to be updated, and it will certainly test on WPA3 extensively, as well as several other new security related concepts that have not been in past versions of CWSP, like Hotspot 2.0, a lot of things. Okay, so there are several different things that are going to end up being added, and a lot of things I'm sure will be downgraded. But we'll find out only after the JTA exactly what's going to be in that. Okay, so that's your objective set. Okay, so here's the timelines. Learning materials will begin to be available in September. So you'll start seeing them available in September. For example, the earliest things that you'll be seeing are things like practice tests and e-learning. Books take a while to get through the printers and become available, so that'll take a little while, be a little later in the month. The exam itself will go live on October the 1st, 2018. So that will be the first date you could schedule the exam, to take the exam. Previous version exam, the old version of CWDP, will retire November 30th, 2018. Now, this information is at the CWNP.com website on the CWP certification page, too, to remind you. So, CWDP certification page has this information there. There's a note at the top, and then there is also a note out from the objectives documents reminding you of that. And I put this in here on Monday with CWAP and just put it in here again to make sure that I remembered to share this with you. CWTS retires December 31st, 2018. It's not related to CWDP directly, but I'm just putting it out there everywhere that I can to make sure that people remember and know that that exam is going away. That means that you can't take the exam anymore after December 31st this year. If you have the certification, you'll still have it. We'll maintain that, and it will be able to be logged and tracked, but you won't be able to take the exam after December 31st, 2018. So for CWDP, again, the new exam goes live October 1st. The old version, CWDP-302, will retire November 30th, 2018. And after that date, you won't be able to take that exam anymore. So if you've got materials and you're studying for CWDP and you've been putting it off, it's either time to jump on it and get the old exam taken, or start studying for the new exam and be prepared to take it. So those will be your choices there. All right, so I want to thank you for attending today, but also let you know about a pre-release special. So if you go to cwnp.link/DP, cwnp.link/DP, you can sign up for an email notification when products are available, and we run a pre-release special. So we're going to do a big discount in pre-release on the learning materials. So make sure you sign up for that. If you weren't with me on Monday, the CWAP link is cwnp.link/, you guessed it, AP. So cwnp.link/AP, cwnp.link/DP gets you signed up to the email notification list for when we announce our pre-release special for these learning products.